Along the shore the cloud waves break, the twin suns sink beneath the lake, the shadows lengthen in Carcosa.
Have you seen the yellow sign?
You, sir, should unmask.
I pray God will curse the writer, as the writer has cursed the world with this beautiful, stupendous creation.
Indeed, it's time.
Terrible in its simplicity.
We all have laid aside disguise, but you.
Irresistible in its truth.
No mask? No mask!
A world which now trembles before the King in
Yellow had
Yellow.
opened his tattered mantle, and there was only God to cry to now.
I cannot forget Carcosa, the black stars that hang in the sky, the twin suns, the pallid mask. It has become one of, if not my favorite book, since I've read it. I heard of the Minecraft ARG searching for a world that doesn't exist, and how it was supposedly an adaptation of The King in Yellow, and it was recommended to me extensively, so I decided I'd give the original anthology a read before watching the ARG. Now, before I say anything about the ARG, I need to tell you about The King in Yellow, and then we'll get into why the ARG sucks fucking balls, and why yes, it is that deep. The King in Yellow is a collection of short stories, more or less connected by certain themes and motifs. The main motif that appears in the first 4 stories is, of course, the titular in-universe play named The King in Yellow. I'm not gonna do a summary of each story, but I highly recommend you go read them. And before we dive into the ARG, I want to clear up a few things. I understand that this is not an adaptation of The King in Yellow. It merely happens to contain him. To that I say, let's be fucking honest with ourselves here. They name drop him, Carcosa, the yellow sign is present. This is an adaptation. Not of the story, or any of the short stories, but of the character, and it should be treated as such. Also, after recording this, I noticed that in the description of the second video, Weefees claims that this isn't actually The King in Yellow, and that if anything it follows more from the Lovecraftian adaptation, Hastur. So that's just fucking wrong? Lovecraft never adapted The King in Yellow. He only ever made passing mention of Hastur and Carcosa as little Easter eggs, which was far from uncommon for him. So I'm gonna give Weefees the benefit of the doubt and assume that he meant the Durlurth adaptation from The Return of Hastur. And even then, that's a bold fucking statement for many reasons. First off, that story was, and still is, pretty widely disliked because it's just really mid. But also, Weefees' take on the king has like absolutely nothing to do with Hastur as we see him in that short story. So, don't know what the fuck he means there. Besides, what the fuck is that even supposed to mean? An adaptation of an adaptation. That's not how that works. You're still adapting The King in Yellow whether you like it or not. You can't just grab the character, take out the parts you didn't feel like putting effort into, and then go around puppeteering that corpse acting like that shouldn't invite comparison. Also, when Weefees mentions Cthulhu in his video creating a world that doesn't exist, he keeps calling him the Cthulhu. What the fuck is up with that?
This guy, the Cthulhu, the symbol of the Cthulhu, and the...
He knows that's not a moniker, right? That's his name? That's if I called him the Weefees, or called him the Simon. His name is Simon Butcher Lung, goddammit. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more it seems that Weefees had absolutely no fucking clue what he was adapting. So anyway, the next point I make is a bit undermined by the fact that Weefees has undermined it himself, but I think it still stands. I personally find it even more disrespectful to Weefees to claim that his take on the king shouldn't be held to the same standard as other people that have adopted certain motifs from the book. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in castes when it comes to art, and I will be holding Weefees to the same standards as I would any artist, out of respect for him as a fellow creator. First off, we're gonna start with some positives about these 2 videos. To start, I actually do really love the first one. It's got a great mood all around, The narration is a little overbearing at times, and I bet a good 5 to 10 minutes could have been shaved off, but it's good. I really enjoyed it. The ending is brilliant, and I really love the idea of censoring whatever's behind the gates. It's really good. For the second part, I like the part with the church. The book lowering Avery's garden and him being stuck in the garden for like 12 hours. That was a super cool moment that gave me a similar feeling of dread that the book did. And that's it. That's all the good I have to say about the second video from a literary point of view. Now let's start tearing this thing apart. The King in Yellow is an extremely fluid being, as in that he can stand for a great many things. On my first read, I interpreted the King as a metaphor for mental illness or neurodivergence, and how it isolates you and makes you feel like you might be going mad. I'm autistic, if you couldn't tell, and I personally related greatly to the way the characters felt after reading the play. It felt very close to what I feel like when I develop a new hyperfixation. Quite ironic that this book has become exactly that, and it's one of the many reasons I love this book. It makes me feel heard, for I too cannot forget Carcosa. Under that lens, the King in Yellow is a being that stands for isolation, for that constant feeling of not belonging anywhere but inside your own head. Now, upon deeper research, it's much more likely that the King is a metaphor for something else entirely, the death of God, as in the death of morality. When the King in Yellow was released, the decadent movement was in its prime, and it was a movement that reveled in excess and hedonism. It saw nature as primitive, and considered the experiences of the self as the highest form of good, and it was also fascinated with the idea of beauty and evil. These are all concepts that went directly against the Romantics and Catholics, two groups of which Robert Chambers belonged. Decadent French novels, in that time, were known to be wrapped in yellow covers as a warning of their content, and one of the most famous books of that movement was The Yellow Book. But there is huge symbolism with the color yellow even beyond that. It's the color of riches, wealth, but also of sickness, jaundice, decay, an old and withered white, like yellow teeth or old paper. That color wasn't picked at random. And again, I'm skimming through the layers upon layers of symbolism behind the King in Yellow. But the point is that it is vague enough to be interpreted in many different ways, but the feelings that it conjures within us are reminiscent of so many different facets of the human experience that we can't help but associate this abstract figure with a variety of woes and afflictions. The King in Yellow could mean nearly anything to you. He could mean mental illness like he did for me, sickness, aging, or maybe like he did for the author. He represents the decay of morality in a world that is less and less concerned with what is right. A world that trembles before the King in Yellow. It puts a face on so many tragedies that we're all familiar with. A face that wears no mask. And now, since I'm sure we'll all need a bit of positivity in what is essentially a hate-fueled who knows how many minutes rant, I'm going to draw attention to an adaptation of The King in Yellow that I believe is actually well executed. And it's one I'm sure a lot of you have interacted with without knowing where it drew from. Elden Ring and the Flame of Frenzy. The King himself is not present in any direct form in Elden Ring, at least not in any form that I would consider close enough to be properly identified. But the themes, symbolism, and purpose of the Flame of Frenzy overlap perfectly with the book. The visual parallels are already huge, with the Frenzy Flame seal looking eerily similar to the most popular version of the Yellow Sign, a symbol associated with the King that possesses strange reality warping abilities. The Flame of Frenzy also takes its 3 colors from the first edition cover of The King in Yellow. It's also worth noting that the Yellow Sign, while we've come to know it as this symbol, which comes from the TTRPG, is not what the original author imagined when he pictured the Yellow Sign. It was likely meant to be this symbol used on the first edition spine, an upside-down torch, with torches representing truth and knowledge. In Elden Ring, the Frenzied Flame is the last desperate plea of a people that was genocided by the Golden Order, a plea to let chaos take it all away, to meld everything in the yellow flame of chaos. It represents nihilism, decay, a sickness so deeply rooted in the current order that the only solution is death. It's the death of morality, as it is experienced by an oppressed group, living under a regime that has no qualms when it comes to systematic eradication. Sound familiar? It's no surprise that The King in Yellow has endured for so long, as its themes are still incredibly relevant to this day, and will likely keep being relevant forever. And that's why it's been adapted so much. We need to put faces on our problems. We have been doing that since forever, and the King in Yellow is another way that we do it, while also having that personification of our problems rooted in an already powerful work that invokes so many strong emotions. It helps makes this figure feel alive, real and tangible. And here's where one of the ARG's biggest failings appears. In this ARG, the King in Yellow stands for nothing. Nothing? Genuinely, does the King in Yellow even have any reason to be here? What does he even do? In the first video at the very least, you could stretch it and claim that he stands for insanity, a loss of control, something along those lines. And you could make a case for it. But with that second video, the best interpretation I could come up with is that the King stands for mental illness in a loved one. But that would be worse, as Durlord's death is treated as a triumphant moment. So this would be glorifying what I can only equate to suicide, and I'm sure that wasn't the intention. At least I hope so. The King stands for absolutely fuck all. He's just there to be a twirling mustache villain, a cartoon antagonist, a fucking power scaling tool for Durlord to Orbifold. He shouldn't even have been the King. Just make another fucking character for your antagonist. They stripped the King of everything that made him the King in Yellow. He's just the King, while also making the references even more direct, all for the sake of hype moments and aura. And I see you coming. Oh, you, the curtain is just blue, fellows. If there was a slur for your flavor of anti-intellectualism, I would use it right about now. It's not that deep, you cry out from your hovering seats. Not everything needs layers of symbolism and other nonsense. Well, to that, I say,
fucking useless sack of shit! Get out! Get out!
If it really isn't that deep, then why the fuck did you click on this video and reach this part? Get off. This isn't for you. I better not see one of you motherfuckers in my comment section, and I better see a sharp fucking drop in viewership from this point onward. Go. I beg of you. I cannot stand you people. And henceforth, I will assume that everyone still watching actually believes in the value of art, the good and bad it can do to our society, and the power it has to change our lives. As long as we're on the same page here, I'm sure we'll get along great. So this is already a big fucking problem. We've stripped the King in Yellow from one of his most important characteristics, the layers upon layers of symbolism that constitute him. But maybe, just maybe we can bring this back, right? Maybe the ARG has a compelling story, good depictions of cosmic horror themes and moods, right? God, I fucking wish.
Someone whose mind is so corrupted, so full of infinite knowledge, and a mind that...
infinite knowledge. So, did Weefies even consider what that would be like for a human to receive that kind of thing? First off, your brain probably doesn't have enough hardware to store all of that, so we're off to a bad fucking start. But let's assume that there's some supernatural bullshit or something happening here that allows you to have all that. Durlord would be a husk, a shell of a fucking human. Picture this. Literally everything that has, could, and did happen is already etched into your memory in all its gritty details. Your sense of self would be fucking annihilated. Anything you were before that would cease to exist. Your existence has been a speck in the sublime vastness of events that are all colliding in your mind with every passing microsecond. But Durlord is just fucking fine. He doesn't give a fuck. And wait, you're telling me he had to find out something about the King and how to defeat him? So that knowledge wasn't infinite then, you fucking liar. I don't know, Weefies, that knowledge is looking pretty fucking finite to me. What the fuck are we doing? Actually, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're misunderstanding the source material. The King in Yellow does have themes of forbidden truth in it, something very prevalent in the genres that emerged down the line. But the way that Weefies has executed it is pathetic. It's cowardly. It genuinely makes Durlord unbearable to watch for me. I have the opposite affliction as him, where whenever I do look at my monitor and he's on it, I get this pounding headache and burning desire to kill myself. The concept of forbidden knowledge is very present in the book, but is executed brilliantly, unlike the ARG, which just turns it into a plot convenience. And even then, what the fuck? What do they even do with it? I can't even remember one time where that was actually useful. We know that The King in Yellow is, allegedly, a book of great truths, and it's seemingly that truth, whatever it is, that drives the characters mad upon reading it. We don't know what this truth is for sure. One video I watched on the topic, that was really good by the way, you should go watch it, claims that this truth is the characters becoming aware of their own fictitious nature. I think this theory has its merits, but I don't agree with it. I believe this truth is something that would also lend even more credit to the interpretation that the king represents the death of objective morality. That truth that drives men mad is freedom. The definitive knowledge that whatever they do does not matter. There is no good or evil, nobody looking at us down from the clouds, only ourselves, our actions, and their consequences. This would also explain why the main character of the second story isn't even turned mad from reading the play. As for him, this revelation would instead be liberating, that whatever he does in the pursuit of his love, it cannot be immoral. All that's left is hedonism, the pursuit of joy in any and all its forms, and all the horrors that this may bring, the collapse of our society in the pursuit of individual pleasures, a world that now trembles before the King in Yellow. This is why I also believe that the stranger in the play is the king himself. A mask is used to conceal one's identity or motives, but the king wears no mask. He's a being of truth, of one so horrible that at first glance, people assume that it must be some kind of mask. And the realization that there is none, that this is the king's true visage, that this is the simple and cruel truth, is terrifying to Camilla. After all, the King in Yellow is terrible in its simplicity and irresistible in its truth. None of this complexity that defines the king is present in Weefy's version. It's insultingly simple and dull, and we all know why. Because they had no desire to actually make the King in Yellow. They wanted the Lich from Adventure Time. Most of the dialogue is lifted directly from that show too. And keep in mind, the King in Yellow speaks a grand total of twice in the story if you subscribe to the idea that the stranger is the king. Apart from the "I wear no mask" line, the only other line he says is, "It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God." That's it. Now, I do sympathize with Weefy's a bit for making the King in Yellow a much more direct entity in his take. I wrote a short story of the King in Yellow just to get it out of my system once, and I also made that same mistake. I just couldn't help it. It's far too tempting, so I get that. But you have to realize with hindsight that this isn't a good idea. The King in Yellow is a monarch, a figure that stands so far above us that we shouldn't even pretend that we could anticipate how such a being would think or speak. And if we do try, it must be done sparingly and damn near perfectly, or else the whole mystique just falls apart. And oh boy, does the mystique fall apart with that ending. Isn't it ironic how a king loses to a lord? So this is basically the same ending as Gravity Falls, and also brings into light so many more questions. What the fuck was the king cooking here? The administration of infinite, but very finite knowledge is clearly an intentional act, as the audience isn't affected by it when we look at him while Durlord is speaking to him. So why the fuck did the king do that? What was the fucking plan? Why give Durlord that knowledge that ends up undoing him? Why does he even need a fucking vessel? What would he even do with that? The king has no need for a physical body. Even in the original book, he literally raises a guy from the dead to do his bidding. Is this version of the king supposed to be weaker? Surely he must be, because apparently he can't even be bothered to kill Durlord when he gets his hands on him, which is insane to me. Are you deadass telling me that the King in Yellow is somehow not able to kill just some random fucking guy? Are we serious? Why are we sanitizing villains to the degree where a fucking deity of cosmic nihilism can't kill some fat ass playing Minecraft for the past week? The king's actions make no fucking sense. Somehow he manages to both not be a character and only a plot device, but also is too much of a character. I don't know how to even describe that. How do you get it wrong so fucking bad? In the book, the king's actions are calculated. The yellow sign acts as a gateway for him to force himself into somebody's life without their consent, while in the other stories, he simply uses those that seek him through the play as pawns for the larger game that he's playing. So what the fuck is he doing here? This is like if a chess grandmaster got scholars mated by a fucking sea cucumber. I'm not saying we should know what the king's plan is. We don't. For all we know, it's a Nyarlathotep situation, or he's just doing this shit for the love of the game. But what we need to know is that his actions are precise, calculated, and meaningful, which they are not here. The King in Yellow in this RG is a bumbling moron that lacks either the abilities or the ruthlessness needed to kill a singular, regular-ass dude, even after he's had him in his clutches. How am I supposed to take him seriously as an antagonist from here? There's a lot more problems with the story too. Like, why are the worlds even a thing? Except, of course, for, again, hype moments and aura. I also despise that line. Isn't it ironic a king loses to a lord? No, it's not ironic. The word you're looking for is contrived. I have no problem with Durlord being smart, but the way he's executed in this video is fucking stupid. And it's a far cry to the genuine intelligence we saw in the first video. The reason it felt real in searching for a world is specifically because he was still being outsmarted by the king in the end. He was still 2 steps behind, and that makes it grounded. I can wholeheartedly believe that Durlord managed to trick the king with the chunk loading trap specifically because this is like the single edge that Durlord gets on the king. That chunk loading trap moment was much more compelling than anything that happened in the second part because it showcases our protagonist's intelligence by him doing something most of us would have never even known was an option. Who the fuck knows what a loading chunk trap is? But it's still not enough in the end. The king is just too far above him for any of his tricks to be meaningful. And that was scary, because if Durlord can't win, what chance do we have? And really, all these glaring flaws can be explained pretty easily. Searching for a world that doesn't exist was an unnerving cosmic horror ARG paying homage to the King in Yellow. But destroying a world that doesn't exist is a cartoon for children. And I know there's some cartoons out there, they can have some mature moments, but to say that it's not for kids is just dishonest. There's such a thing as a target audience, which is taken into account when making any decision in the creative process of any art form. The target audience for these cartoons is children, and when you draw most of your inspiration from works meant for children, you end up with something basic, simple, and surface level at best. It's perfectly normal for artists to take inspiration from one another. Literally everyone does it. I do it, you do it if you're an artist. The author of The King in Yellow took the name of Carcosa from another author called Ambrose Bierce and his story An Inhabitant of Carcosa. It's a normal thing to do. But you have to be aware when you do it. You need to be aware of what you're drawing inspiration from and how it will affect your work. And Weefies must have been blissfully unaware of the fact that before he knew it, he had taken so much inspiration from entertainment meant for children that his own work had become infected by it. And that's why the king's speech just isn't scary. Because the Lich's speech was directed towards children. He is basically just telling you, I am strong, I am dangerous, you should be afraid of me. So that the kids can go, oh right, this guy is evil and powerful. Okay. Because we treat children like fucking idiots that can't figure out anything by themselves. And to be fair, children are pretty fucking stupid. But it isn't helping that entertainment directed towards them is constantly dumbed down and made simple and sanitized. And that sanitization and simplicity taken from Adventure Time and Gravity Falls and whatever other cartoons you may have been inspired by have infested destroying a world that doesn't exist. To the point that Weefy says this in his behind the scenes video.
Because I couldn't conceive a way for a human to win against an all-knowing god.
If you can't figure it out, then maybe that's because it shouldn't happen. The King in Yellow cannot lose because he embodies concepts that will plague us likely until the end of time. He is the pallid face that we cast on the problems that come packaged with free will. You can't defeat that! But by that point in the creative process, the identity of destroying a world that doesn't exist had already been corrupted by the target audience it unwillingly adopted. Children. The thought of our protagonists just losing must have been unthinkable at this stage, even though that is what should happen. But no, cartoons can't end like that. How can we make our characters win? And yes, I know, Durlord is implied to die afterwards, but that's pathetic, that's cowardly, that's safe. We just sacrifice a character heroically. They get to say their goodbyes, to die happy and fulfilled, while taking this cosmic entity down with them. It's sanitized, it's safe, it's for children. And that brings me to my next and final point in this video, which concerns art in general and the way we approach it in the big 2026. The age of AI slop, it's not that deep, just let people enjoy things. In a way, destroying a world that doesn't exist is a perfect representation of our current culture when it comes to art. It's simple, mishmashed from previous, better works, it's safe, and it doesn't concern itself with anything too complex, like symbolism, metaphors, or anything of the sort. It exists as a story to be consumed and it ends there. And that's a big fucking problem. Art is something that is valuable, it's important to our society, and we have been using it to express so many complex things for so long, we can't lose that. Think of religion. At the end of the day, it's stories that we've been telling ourselves, and these stories have defined the world we live in with nothing but words. I genuinely have to stop myself from raving about this for too long. This is already so much longer than the Iron Lung video. My point is, and I'm sure we can all agree, art is important. It has the capacity to change us, help us make parallels with difficult situations in our lives. We can synthesize fictional events with our own lives and use that to better understand the world we live in and the things we're going through. It also has the power to make people feel heard and seen, which is something we need as humans. It's a social tool that transcends time and space. The phenomenon of literally me characters, as funny as it is, shows that despite the age of apathy that we live in, we still crave that connection with the imaginary. We want to see ourselves represented, to feel as though, yes, we are members of the human species, that whatever you are feeling right now, somebody else has understood it and put time, effort, and passion into putting those things down on paper or on the screen. Robert Chambers understood this, and certainly felt this way too, and that's why The King in Yellow works through a book. He weaponizes art, turning this tool of beautiful expression and communication into one of manipulation, a tool so powerful that the whole world trembles before it. In a way, The King in Yellow is like a macabre celebration of art, a way to showcase the power it wields and the impact it can have on the world. It's no surprise that most of what comes out recently hails from the past, why sequels, remasters, and whatnot are so popular, because consciously or not, we crave quality, we crave complexity. We need it to reflect the chaotic and overwhelming world we live in. But unfortunately, we are constantly bombarded by so much negative information that the thought of putting even more time and effort into analyzing what we have come to view as mere entertainment feels like a chore. But it shouldn't be. It's fun, it's informative and enriching. And until we start embracing that complexity in arts that we've mostly lost to the past, until we demand better from artists and become more critical of them, modern creators will continue to piggyback on their forefathers' shoulders, taking the names, appearances, and surface-level concepts of better works, slapping it onto their own, and hoping that the association will somehow elevate their own creation to the same height as those that dedicated their lives to pouring their souls onto the canvas. I feel the need to record this part because while editing this video, I realized that my tone may have come off as a little bit more aggressive than I intended, and that's because I recorded this in a bad fucking mood, and the script was written in one sitting. It's 12 pages of pure, unfiltered anger, because while I was looking for something to watch while eating, I stumbled upon a video of someone reading The King in Yellow because of the ARG, and misunderstanding it so fucking bad that it kind of felt like a personal attack on my soul. The main thing I want to clear up is that this isn't a personal attack on Weefies at all. I have no problems with him as a person or as a creator. He clearly has a lot of talent, as he has showcased in Searching for a World That Doesn't Exist, which again, I adore. As a standalone Minecraft ARG, I have no problems with it, and if it wasn't for destroying a world that doesn't exist, I would be singing its praises without any shame. And you know, while destroying a world that doesn't exist still sucks, don't get me wrong, I stand by everything I said in that video wholeheartedly, but a single bad work doesn't define you as an artist. Even Lovecraft, who's one of my favorite authors, has some absolutely dog shit stories under his belt. The Color Out of Space, brilliant, genius, I love it. The Rats in the Walls, unbearable dog shit. Do not read The Rats in the Walls, it's not worth it. It's not good. It's not anywhere near good. I can't believe that these two stories were written by the same person. It's fucking jarring. And Robert Chambers is a similar case where The King in Yellow was his second publication, and then for the rest of his life he proceeded to make only romance slop, and in his Wikipedia page, if you look in the notable works section, there's only one fucking book in there, and take a wild guess what it is. So yeah, I don't want this to come off as me saying that Weefies is a bad artist or a bad creator, but he really dropped the ball on destroying a world that doesn't exist, which is a damn shame, because this story still had the potential for a sequel that could have been strong as an adaptation of The King in Yellow. It could have really been a really cool modern interpretation of that character and concept. And, you know, I realize that some comments might complain that the comments I give are harsh and maybe a bit aggressive, and that's because they are, but, you know, for the sake of making these comments a bit more constructive, I want to give my take on what destroying a world that doesn't exist could have been. Even though I know that now some comments are going to say that, oh, I'm only mad because my vision wasn't the one that Weevy's had, but if I don't do it, then people are going to say that I couldn't make anything better if I tried, so really there's no winning here, and I'd rather just give my take for the people that want to hear it. I think a really interesting direction that destroying a world that doesn't exist could have taken is if it leaned even more in the, let's be honest and call it what it is, a pretty homoerotic relationship between Avery and Durlord. And I think it would have been really cool if searching for a world that doesn't exist could have retroactively been made to symbolize some kind of toxic relationship, so something that Durlord would have gone head on into, knowing the risks, but believing himself strong and smart enough to withstand it, only to be met with the realization that no, it's still broken him despite everything. And then the King in Yellow could have stood for almost like PTSD in a way, some kind of like trauma that doesn't let Durlord go, doesn't let him move on, and then when he meets Avery, he feels like that burden is stuck to him and that it might hurt Avery, so the story would have instead been Durlord trying to push him away, despite the fact that Avery can help him. And in the end, you could have had a similar ending where Durlord quote-unquote sacrifices himself by killing himself, believing that he's taking the King in Yellow down with him and getting him away from Avery, only to then us, the audience, realize that no, the King was never tied to Durlord, and now the King's latched on to Avery because Durlord, in taking his own life, has only transferred that pain over to the very person he was trying to protect. And again, I thought of this over like a fucking bus ride. Like, it's really not that hard. The foundations for a really good story were already there. All that was left was to really dig in there and just find it. And I think that's the biggest shame with this story, that it didn't do that. It was so close to something so good, but just fell short at the finish line of conceptualizing the story. And I think that's such a wasted opportunity. The other part that I want to elaborate on, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be very angry at me, is my point about cartoons, which I feel could have been worded better. I still think the arguments come through, but I still want to elaborate just to make sure that like we're all on the same page here. What I mean is that kids media in our current age is extremely sanitized. It's made safe, and yes, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but even those shows that some of you might adore and believe are like these mature adult pieces like Adventure Time and Gravity Falls, they're still for children. The fact that there's some shocking moments like, ooh, Bill Cipher, like that's like gory shit a little bit, kinda, that doesn't mean that it's not for kids. Kids can handle that stuff. Kids have been handling that stuff since forever. Same for Adventure Time. Like, let's be fucking honest, the Lich isn't that scary. It's scary because you were a kid. And, you know, if you're an adult now and you think the Lich is scary, that's fine, you're allowed. We all have our, like, odd fears and everything. But don't go ahead and pretend like this is some kind of, like, hallmark of horror. Like, this should be alongside shit like Hereditary, and, like, it's not all that. You know, like, someone just got done watching Cannibal Holocaust. You're not going to recommend Gravity Falls to them afterwards, would you? And that's not a fault of the creators necessarily. I think that the thing that should be put to blame the most is usually the distributors and editors that want to make everything safe and censored, and just like they need to appeal to as large of an audience as possible, and that means taking as little risk as possible. And that is something that has plagued children's entertainment all the way back in Tolkien's time, even he had that view that children's stories were becoming so dull and simple that they lost all substance, all that made them matter, all that made them important. So, you know, I should have probably written the script for this section, but I'm tired. This video's taking so fucking long to finish. I kind of just want to get it done. You know, if this video has been terrible in its simplicity and irresistible in its truth, make sure to like, smash the subscribe button, ring the bell, whatever the fuck people say. You know what? Actually, you know what? No, don't subscribe. Don't like the video. I mean, yeah, you can if you want to. But if you actually really liked the video, if you truly did, do me a favor. Go read The King in Yellow. I promise. It's an incredible book. I'm sure you'll love it. I will put in the description a link for an audiobook on YouTube and a PDF of the entire book. It's a 130-year-old book. No one gives a shit. You can just type, most books nowadays, you can just type the name and then PDF and it'll come up. Like, you don't need to search that far. But even then, I'll put the link in the description for you. So just go in there and go read it. And then spread the gospel. Make the world tremble before the King in Yellow.